All right, you made it. You have it all, the life you want, except you're missing something. Welcome to The Guy Show, featuring the experts giving you the tips, tricks, and tutelage in wellness, lifestyle, and all things guy, and for the gals that tolerate them for sure. We are here to answer your questions on the things you want to know about. Welcome to The Guy Show. I'm super excited tonight. I have Dr. Gabrielle Lyon here. She is a functional medicine doctor who looks to treat the root cause as opposed to just the symptoms through nutrition, lifestyle changes, supplementation, medicine when needed, and holistic means. She utilizes many tools to have her patients feeling better than ever. She's trained in nutrition and metabolism. She's uniquely practicing muscle-centric medicine, which aims to support the largest organ in the body, no, not the skin, the muscle, the organ of longevity. Through this integrative practice, her patients can truly heal and thrive. Gabrielle is well known as an educator, mentor, healer, and friend to all her patients, friends, and family. Teaching is a passion of hers and a huge part of her practice so that patients can take an active role in their health as a partnership. She practices in New York City at the Ash Center, and she just got done, which we talked about before the show started, she just got done speaking at Charles Poliquin's conference or retreat here just this past weekend.
Yeah, super fun.
Yeah, so how'd that go?
It was great. We had a lot of fun. It was a very long day, so we talked for 8 hours, and we talked about muscle-centric medicine.
That's a bit, as we talked, that's a bit of a long time to talk.
Yeah.
By your loans, and you have a voice still, and it's been since this weekend, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, it was great. The audience was really receptive. I worked really hard to kind of change their thinking in terms of everybody thinks about being over fat as the problem, but it's not. It's about being under muscled.
That's a huge, that's our first hashtag tonight, under muscled.
Yeah.
Not over fat, under muscled. But
Yeah.
that's such a true thing, and that's really kind of how you focus on is building that lean mass up. And as guys, we're always wanting more mass. A couple of weeks ago, we had the curls for the girls hashtag. So we'll have to come up with something fun like that you'll come up with. But yeah, building muscle is such a key aspect because we have so much obesity and diabetes, dementias in today. So what are some unique ways that you really look at that in getting somebody more muscle mass?
Well, before I talk about muscle mass, I think it's really important to kind of illuminate the problem. And so the problem isn't extra fat or adiposity. Insulin resistance and all those metabolic derangements starts years before it actually starts in the muscle. So insulin resistance doesn't start anywhere else in the body. It starts in the muscle a couple years before. So, I mean, people don't think about it like that. So the treatment actually isn't getting the fat off. The treatment is really augmenting the muscle.
Okay. That's a total different approach than what typically people think.
Right. Yeah. And it's about lowering systemic inflammation so you can actually stimulate the tissue, getting a hormonal balance, lowering that chronic low level of inflammation, and really being able to build muscle. So for example, if a woman has low thyroid, her muscle fibers actually change from type 1 to type 2 and then atrophy.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting process there. So it is all that inflammation and imbalances, those things actually inhibit the muscle tissue from growing.
Absolutely. And, you know, muscle tissue is the metabolic regulator. It's the metabolic sink. It's responsible for your resting metabolic rate, for glucose disposal, fatty acid oxidation. Without healthy muscle, I mean, the muscle actually gets full of muscle glycogen if you eat in excess. And then it actually changes the metabolism so you're no longer moving into lipolysis. It just spills over. So it really shuts the body down in terms of being able to metabolize anything. Not good.
No, not good at all. No, we need to be burning there. So yeah, when it fills up, do the receptors actually shut down and pull into the cells then, or what goes on? Because we hear that, and you know, people will hear that and be like, oh, your insulin resistance, your glucose resistance. So what's occurring there on the cellular level? Because that's, people can grasp that a little easier. Like, are receptors shutting down, or what's going on?
Well, it's a couple things. When you have excess glycogen, there can be it actually shuts down the enzyme, the glycogen synthase enzyme. So you're no longer able to continue to store. And after that happens, you can have receptor issues. It's not necessarily a stepwise process. It really just depends on an individual's metabolism, but it definitely starts with glycogen synthase downregulating.
Interesting.
The actual enzyme.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting. And so, and then there's the natural process that occurs from that,
Right.
that furthers along that process, not necessarily like you're saying, not necessarily a domino effect, but
Right.
just the continuance of more insulin resistance, more glucose resistance in them, and inability to use that for their energy stores.
Exactly, because then the body can't, you got it, the body can't dispose of glucose. So if muscle is the largest site for insulin-mediated glucose disposal, you've filled up your muscle and they're not exercising, they have inflammation, then you're no longer able to utilize it in that way, and they don't actually burn fat because they're spilling the free fatty acids into the bloodstream.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that starts way before that they get hyperglycemia. And that starts way before you start to see blood markers. That's really key to understand. By the time you've got blood marker elevation, you have this problem for a while.
Yeah, and that's one thing I say to the patients too, is trying to catch things early before we get to that disease process showing on regular blood work, lab work through there. So is there earlier stage testing that can be done either through blood work or some more of the functional medicine based stuff that they could maybe catch some of this stuff with?
So to date, there isn't.
Okay.
It's really important if you're looking at insulin resistance in the muscle, aside from a muscle biopsy, which I don't know if you've ever done those.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
No.
It's kind of like, you want to volunteer for that or a spinal tap?
Well, so in terms of, it's a very new style of medicine. In terms of actually measuring metabolic markers for muscle, it's not done. It's not done in the clinical. But if you look at a person's phenotype and you know that they can't build muscle and they've got extra adiposity, you know that has been kind of a long-standing thing. And that, one of the other things that you can look at is definitely inflammatory markers, and hormonal dysregulation also starts pretty early.
So define phenotype.
Phenotype. So a phenotypic expression would be someone who, for example, you've got mesomorph or ectomorph or endomorph. So you've got the skinny build or the kind of robust guy or that really lean muscular guy. That's a phenotypic expression. Okay.
Just so the audience could really understand what you meant by that one there. Sometimes we use big words and we're like, as two docs talking, we're like, I know exactly what you're saying. And then the audience is going, what?
I actually can't spell half the words, so it's fine.
That's why we have doctors' handwriting. We have our own font because we can't spell half the stuff we're saying.
It's so true. It's so true.
Yeah.
Spell check has really messed me up.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Spell check's wonderful for that. Now, in those different phenotypes, the thin, the good lean muscular, and kind of the larger, more adiposity type there, we see that it was always thinking kind of that body mass index being a huge indicator for people for their health, but it's really not the case, is it?
No. So in my clinic, we always measure skeletal muscle mass, and it's really great to get a baseline. Everyone's body type. So you're a strong, big guy, right? So your skeletal muscle mass.
I got the curls for the curls.
Yeah. You slipped me a 5 to say that.
I did. Thank you. Yeah.
So, for example, for a guy like you, we don't know how much muscle is optimal for you, but what we can do is we can measure you at baseline, and then I can track you to see if we're decreasing body fat, if we're maintaining the integrity of your skeletal muscle through periods of months. And that's really the key to just baseline. I don't look at BMI. I'm sure you don't either, but I do look at body fat percent, and I look at where they're holding it, because we know visceral adiposity increases negative, bad adipokines, which are inflammatory markers, decreases the good cytokines, adiponectin, things like that. So
yeah, so it's that, as we see, you hear like, oh, he's really they're really skinny, so they must be healthy, and it's not, because you can be that skinny fat.
Yes, you can be skinny fat. Not a good look.
Not a good look. It's like, hey, you're really skinny, but you're fat.
Right.
And that's looking at those issues of cardiovascular risk can actually be a more, I'm assuming those can be a more cardiovascular risk, the skinny fat, than say the more mesomorphic, stronger individual who might be considered obese on a BMI scale because they have so much.
Right. And when you think about, that's a good point. And when you think about metabolic dysregulation, it's really about the ratio of body fat to skeletal muscle,
Hmm.
because we know that diabetes, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's disease, sarcopenia are all actually diseases of the muscle first.
Hmm.
And that is the same underlying pathology with different phenotypic expressions. So the disease processes are expressed differently, but the underlying issue is all impaired skeletal muscle. Um,
Is there key way? Well, we'll come to that because that's going to be a loaded question. Is there key ways to work out? Well, yes, there is, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that one.
yeah.
A big question that comes up a lot for people is protein in the diet.
Yeah.
Is there target times that I should be having protein? Is there non-target times I should not be having protein? Or how much protein should I really be getting into my body on a daily basis?
Before we talk about protein is really the black sheep. It's a really emotional topic because it
Uh-huh.
is the only source that has a face,
Okay.
right?
Hmm.
Nobody gets offended about talking about Twinkies or fats I mean, you might, but
Don't offend the Twinkie.
right. There's no emotional pull to those things, but when it comes to protein, you've now put a face
Hmm.
to something, and it has created a environment that has become very emotional and less scientific.
Hmm.
So our baseline paradigm of thinking about protein is completely skewed. And what I mean by that is the origin of how we got our recommendations were
Hmm.
based on World War II, 1940 recommendations from pig farmers.
Hmm.
And it was based on nitrogen studies. So they figured out how much protein they would have to feed a pig to grow.
Yeah.
And they collected and then they translated that somehow to humans. And then they they put them in these suits, and then they collected all their nitrogen.
Hmm.
And then they came up with some number.
Okay.
And that was based at 0.8 grams per kilogram in 1940.
Right. Yeah.
And
On a 5'7" guy who's 150 pounds.
yeah, from pig farmers.
Yeah.
So that's our current paradigm of thinking,
Okay.
and that's completely wrong.
Okay.
So if you think of 0.8 grams per kilogram, we've got that in our head that 60 grams of protein is enough, and that 100 is too high. That's completely wrong.
Okay.
The science is very clear
Hmm.
that we need 30 grams a meal.
Okay.
If you're younger, if let's say you're 40 and younger, you may need a little less. And then if you're 40 and over, you may need a little bit more. But in order to stimulate muscle protein synthesis, which is obviously the organ of longevity,
Hmm.
you need 30 grams at a meal.
Okay. And is that, and to clarify that, that's across the board, male, female?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that's the safe zone. So that's just for baseline maintenance. We're not even talking about optimization.
Okay.
Right. And I know that you're really tight on your diet and you look at your macros. And so let's say you undershoot your protein, and 30 grams is 4 ounces.
Hmm.
You're actually a big guy. You need between 5 and 6 to actually stimulate your optimal muscle protein synthesis.
Hmm. And that's about what I get per meal, is about 5 to 6 grams, depending on the protein source.
Okay. And so that's very wise of you, and you've been able to maintain your muscle, right?
I'm smart. You just said I'm smart. I'm wise.
Oh, great. What's interesting is so branched chains and proteins have multiple roles in the body. And, we always think about muscle protein synthesis, and that's where we will start, because to maintain muscle integrity means to maintain metabolism.
Mm-hmm.
And as you age, that changes. So we know that if you destroy your muscle, sarcopenia, Alzheimer's disease, all that stuff starts in your 30s. So a really practical take-home utilization for your people is that they need 30 grams, which is 4 ounces per meal. And you require that for muscle protein synthesis. But what's interesting is anything less than that, you actually still get this leucine effect. And leucine is one of the branched chain amino acids. And it drives up metabolism because it increases fatty acid oxidation. Number one. Number two, it generates glutamine. And that feeds the immune cells. And it also generates alanine, and it goes into the glucose-alanine cycle, so it allows your body to maintain gluconeogenesis. There's a lot of other reasons to eat protein. But back to the 30 grams, a minimum for everyone should have 90 grams a day.
Okay.
Minimum.
That's 3 meals essentially on an average there for 90 grams.
Right. And people think that's a lot.
No.
That's the minimum to not age poorly.
Yeah.
That's so that you don't get arm flab. That's the minimum.
No, now we have to come up with a hashtag for that. Let me think about that one.
No arm flab.
Hashtag no arm flab, eat protein.
You nailed it. I mean, I don't know what the equivalent is for men, but something like that. Mm-hmm. That's really important to understand. So people, when I say 90 grams or 33 times a day, they really believe that that's a lot. And actually, it's not a lot. And when you think about the food guide pyramid and all of the traditional ways in which we've developed nutritional guidelines, they've made everybody fat. I mean, so for a long time, everyone was saying that fat was bad up until recently.
Right.
It just makes sense that the next macronutrient to be discussed is protein.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's so true. And if you think about that, if they're eating, 3 meals at the 30 grams per thing, 90 things, that's 4 ounces that's only 12 ounces, not even a pound of protein
right
a day, essentially. It's very little. And definitely we see so many people under eating the amount of protein they're getting per day, overeating bad fats, overeating the simple carbs there, and really not getting enough protein to sustain their system, exactly what you're saying.
And they're not, they don't sustain their immune cells. They don't sustain their gut integrity, neurotransmitters. So mood dysregulation is really key. And again, the 30 grams is minimum. As you age, you need more.
Yeah, there was just an article that came out recently in the last month here in January, February. I remember reading that it was showing our elderly population needs to have way more protein than the average person too, because of that sarcopenia and loss there.
Right. And that needs to start early. And the reason that is because they have a decreased efficiency of, number one, anabolic signaling. mTOR is the hot topic. And their ability to stimulate mTOR is really diminished. And the ability for the amino acid in the blood is diminished. Their ability for the tissues to sense that is lower. So they need more.
Yeah. Now mTOR, I remember because it's mammalian. How does this mammalian?
Mechanistic target of rapamycin. That's what it's now called.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yep. I just trying to remember. I had that one, wrote a paper on it a couple of years ago, and I was just like, what? I try to remember all these. It's always these signals these signaling compounds that we come up with. We use in the graduate school to teach students. You're like, you got to remember all this stuff. When you get out and practice, you're like, yeah, I remember too. But that mTOR is so key there, and leucine also. That's one of the arguments I believe in dairy is because it's super high in leucine, right?
So whey has the highest amount of leucine, and then dairy does have leucine, but dairy has also alpha-lactalbumins, and it has other immunoglobulins that are really great. What's interesting about dairy is in my clinic, and I'm sure in yours, it's very inflammatory. And I've looked at the data, and it's really hard to find evidence to support that. The only thing that I've seen is that A1 protein versus an A2 protein, which is a meat protein. So it's the casein. A1, they've somehow modified that. But that's, again, just opinion and certainly not data.
No, but it's one of those things that we've seen that we've seen with the high dairy that I've seen in clinic is the high dairy users, along with other issues with diet too, usually grain-based and everything else, is it messes with their insulin level so much, is making them more hungry after they have some. So we just have them just because it's a major part of their diet to look at those elimination processes of things they're eating consistently all the time, dairy, wheat, and sugar.
Right. Is there something wrong with that?
What, dairy, wheat, and sugar?
Yeah.
Well, the amounts they're eating all the time is their high-processed diet there. And they're not eating vegetables, they're not eating very little or no fruits, so it's like, let's get away from what you're always eating, the 3 food groups, and get to the major food groups of everything else.
Right.
Not eating, That was one of the arguments the patient had with me. It's like, well, you're limiting my diet. I'm like, well, no, your diet consists of dairy, wheat, and sugar right now. That's it. That's all you're eating. So let's just cut those for a while and go to eat some vegetables and see how you respond. I can't do that because you're limiting what I can take in. I was just like, okay.
And protein quality is another big topic. Sustainability we'll save for the next show because that is really inflammatory in itself. But the concept that plant protein is the same as animal protein, we know that's not true. We know that plants make the protein that plants can use, and animals make the protein that animals can use. Plants are very low in methionine, they're very low in branched chain amino acids, which can be very detrimental. And, it's really interesting because there are some vegan and vegetarians that can do really well. And they believe that actually the gut microbiome breaks down into these amino acids and helps feed them. Their genetics just do really well on that.
Yeah, I've seen some, Joel Kahn, Dr. Joel on here, who's the vegan cardiologist, and he's done really well. And it's probably because he does vary his diet so much and with proteins and vegetable proteins and those processes. But the average vegan doesn't do that, do they?
No. It's about 2% of the population, 2% of my patient population, if you take all of them, that can do well being vegan or vegetarian. It takes 6 cups of quinoa to equal 1 chicken breast. Hemp protein has half the amino acids that say whey protein. And it's really interesting. If you look at the nutrition labels, you see the breakdown of carbohydrates and you see the breakdown of fat, but you only see protein. You don't actually see the breakdown of the quality, which is the quality is based on an amino acid profile. And,
true.
Totally variable.
Yeah. And that's what we see clinic-wise too, is a lot of the vegans that come in are just unhealthy in general. So it's like, we got to try to mix it up a little bit with them, but that's a whole nother combative subject we can go through there. People see like, whey, you're a proponent of whey protein?
If they don't, so I always test them I test their lymphocyte reactivity. So I test their white blood cells, and then I also test, immunoglobulins to see if they're reactive. And if they're not, then it can be fine.
Is isolate or concentrate better?
I prefer isolate. What about you?
Really depending on the situation for the person. But isolate's usually cheaper, if I remember correctly offhand, compared to concentrate.
That I don't know. But if they don't have any inflammatory issues, whey is a great way to reduce calories. And it can be really good for the immune system. And then if they do, I love ATP Labs. If you have not checked them out, you should. And they have a beef protein. Protein is not based on collagen. So if you look at all the other beef proteins on the market, it's all, I've asked the companies for their amino acid profile, and it ends up being collagen and very low in these branched chains. So ATP is great because it's actually it's straight up beef. It doesn't taste like it.
Yeah, and actually tastes pretty good. I've had some good beef proteins. I can't do the collagen ones per se. For some reason, they disrupt my immune system a little bit, but I can do the beef protein no problem at all, which is good. I have one of those systems, luckily, that I can pretty much eat anything I want. It doesn't bother me, except for spelt. Spelt flour.
What do you even eat spelt with?
Well, spelt bread or things like that. It just, for some reason, spelt irritates my system. I know it's one of those weird ones and it's supposed to be good for you, but yeah, it irritates my system there.
No spelt protein.
Yeah, exactly. So, lowering, kind of coming a little bit circle there, fasting. Fasting's kind of a big thing right now. People are going intermittent fasting or long-term fasting. What's your take on that?
I think that the treatment should match the issues. So for example, the severity of the treatment should match the severity of the issue that the person is dealing with. If someone is metabolically dysregulated or obese or has any kind of inflammatory markers, reducing inflammation and getting the metabolism together is paramount. Fasting is great for that. That has great research. It's really great at resetting circadian alignment. It's really great at allowing the body to reset. It has amazing effects on glucose and insulin and triglycerides. And how you fast is important. Whether you do, I think that a fasting window from 12 to 8 is a good option, or from 8 to 4, depending on if it's an athlete. So if it's an athlete after an overnight fast, I start them at 8. And I go to 4. If it's, say, a woman who is really having hormonal issues and she's, say, leptin resistant, then I start her at noon and I feed her from noon to 8.
Okay, so so I can wrap my head around what you had said. So like an athlete, they would fast overnight, but then eat 8 to 4.
Yep.
Okay, and then from 4 p.m. to 8 a.m. the next day, they'd be fasting.
Yeah.
Okay, and then for the women, it was that fast till noon, then eat 12 to 8, and then fast.
Right.
Okay. Just so, because I was like, wait a minute, are we fasting the night and then that? But now I got it.
Yeah. So athletes, people that are really focused on muscle integrity or have to work and have a really hard time working fasted, I like to feed them right away because they're in a metabolic state, they're in a fasting state, and feeding them right away is great. And I feed them obviously 3 times within that span, and each time is high protein, and they can have vegetables, whatever they want. And then for the women, the meals are the same, but if they have, like I said, any kind of leptin resistance, hormonal dysregulation, or eating disorders, I have them fast till noon, because if you start feeding them really early, what I found is that perpetuates that drive to feed, and they're not as successful.
Okay. Interesting there. For working out for myself, I like to not have a full stomach. So I like working out either first thing in the morning or later in the late afternoon when I haven't eaten for several hours before, at least 3 hours before my workout. Is there a negative effect for that, or is that okay?
It's amazing. It's actually, there's a beneficial effect. It's called training low. I don't know if you've read any of the research on training low, but it's training glycogen depleted state.
Okay.
It increases fatty acid oxidation, and it doesn't affect muscle recovery.
Okay.
So it has a lot of benefit on body composition.
Okay.
On performance, if you're doing high intensity stuff and really having to output a lot of energy over a period of time, then training in a low state can be negative. But for people that are your listeners that are wanting to optimize body composition, training in a low glycogen state, in a fasted state, can be very helpful.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, 'cause that's always worked for me, is either first thing in the morning or 5:30, 6:30 at night, as long as I haven't had a big heavy meal at least 3 hours before that.
Yeah.
So I've tried getting it closer, having a meal closer, and people that can like eat and then go work out.
Vomit in your mouth.
Yeah, not gonna work for me at all. It's just like just sitting there in the gut, hanging out. It's like, yeah, the blood is shunted to the digestion. There's no muscle work going on at this point in time.
And you're big into CrossFit, so I can't imagine eating and doing CrossFit.
People do that. They eat, and people at my gym does that. They eat and then they work out, and I'm like, man, no way. Like even sometimes the drinks with a little carb in them or stuff is just too much on my stomach in particular during that workout. It's like, just give me water and I'm good to go. I got a lot of fat I can burn.
No, you don't. What is it called? It's called Farm Strong.
Farm Strong. That's right. I don't have stage show muscle. I'm Farm Strong.
Farm Strong. We should probably mention the branched chain amino acid conversation.
Yeah, go with that.
There was a new paper came out, Bob Wolf, who's been a longtime researcher in branched chain amino acids. There's a big debate in terms of branched chain amino acids causing muscle protein synthesis, and that it's utilized for the repair of the tissue and can help lay down new tissue. I think it's really important to kind of separate the myth from the science there.
There's a lot of myth with it. I mean, you go to the bodybuilding store, the workout store, and it's nothing but branched chain amino acids everywhere and protein everywhere. So this is a huge topic that people need to really get, because you're nailing it with the science, which is big.
Yeah. So let's talk about let's talk about muscle protein synthesis, period.
Sure.
In order to get muscle protein synthesis, you need 2 things. You need to stimulate mTOR, which was that big long word.
Yeah.
And right? That one can spell. You need to trigger mTOR. mTOR then starts the engine of muscle protein synthesis. But in order to actually lay down tissue, you need all the essential amino acids. You need more than branched chains. You need the whole spectrum of the building blocks. Essentially, when you take a branched chain amino acid without taking any other protein, it's turning on the car but not pressing the gas. So it's turning the key, starting the engine, but not going anywhere. So if you use branched chains for muscle protein synthesis, nothing happens. You start the metabolism, but you don't lay down any tissue because you only have the branched chains.
Okay.
So branched chain amino acids do not create muscle protein synthesis. They start the engine, but what they do is many other things.
Okay.
So the benefits of having branched chain amino acids, primarily leucine, when you drink leucine, it does increase fatty acid oxidation.
Okay.
So it drives you to fatty acid oxidation. It increases alanine in the glucose-alanine cycle. So your body becomes much more efficient at generating its own glucose. It generates glutamine. Leucine is required for glutamine production. And it's also required for, and I had mentioned alanine, but it's also required for arginine, which is a vasodilator for hypertension and it gets metabolized in the kidney. So the 2 to 1 to 1 ratio comes from when 1 of leucine goes in, 2 of leucine goes in, you need an isoleucine and a valine to then complete the TCA cycle. So you pull one out and then you have to add them back in. So that is where those ratios come from.
Okay.
So just to recap, muscle protein synthesis cannot happen just from branched chain amino acids.
Okay.
It's starting the engine, but it doesn't make the car go.
Yeah. So if they take a BCAA, because some of the current people, the talk on the streets and the gyms is take the BCAA directly after your workout or as you're finishing, and then making sure you're getting a good protein in within that half hour, 45-minute window.
So that would be enough for generating muscle protein synthesis because they're doing both.
Okay. Because they're
ideally you
starting it up and then you're putting the foot on the gas.
Exactly.
Okay.
There's no harm in taking branched chain amino acids, and the benefits are immune, vasodilation, and all these other things. But interestingly enough, muscle protein synthesis from branched chain amino acids alone doesn't happen.
Interesting. Because that's one of the biggest points they sell on it is take it to build your take it to build your lean mass.
No, negative, Houston. Not gonna happen.
Not gonna happen unless, like we said, you take a protein supplement afterwards that has everything in it, so you can put your foot on the gas and get there.
Exactly.
Nice. See, we're learning a ton here tonight.
That's just a really important point because people have to, when you feed and when you take supplements, you have to have the end result in mind. Why are you doing it? And you should really know why are you doing it and how are you utilizing it?
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, it's like, what are you spending your money on and what are you doing? And is it worthwhile for your system to do it through there? Hormone dysregulation, huge. Huge aspect that we see today, whether it's the cortisol and cortisol response in people or just hormone imbalances in general. If a person is out of balance with their rhythms, with the circadian rhythms, other things that way, should they be this is one of the controversies, if your system's a bit cattywampus there, your cortisol's messed up, should they be doing interval training, high intensity interval training? What should they be doing we still need them exercising, what should they do?
That is a very loaded question. I will tell you, effort is key. Okay. Regardless, the body will adapt. And typically most people, without offending everybody, do not put in the necessary effort to create metabolic change.
Okay.
So with that being said,
the 2-pound weights that we just sit there and do the curls with?
No, or the junk cardio, or the sub-maximal sprints. I mean, when you are really working at full out intensity, your body can do nothing but adapt. So your body, you will kick it out of this negative rhythm, this low level chronic stimulation of cortisol. I mean, you will shock your body out of it and you will regulate it. And of course, there is an under recovery aspect. I treat a lot of athletes and military guys and they may under recover, but you're talking about a very small percentage of people. So I would say to your viewers, the harder the better in a very controlled environment. So if you're doing 12 minutes of maxed out intervals, then you're done. You're done after 12 minutes. If you're doing it right, you can't do anymore. I mean, you do runs. You're done. Roasted.
Done.
So I think if we take a step back and we don't look at that myopic kind of narrow view, we have to understand that our body was designed to put in incredible effort. And when we're stressed and we have all these things happening in this very domesticated environment, when that happens, we don't have the outlet for it. So by training hard with a very serious intensity, you're doing what your body is designed to do.
Yeah. Adapt.
Yeah. I mean, from my clinical perspective, from my experience, I've seen great results. I haven't seen negative results.
Right. And that's, I mean, we kind of just hit it there, I think, a little bit, is our body is designed to adapt to constant stimuli, but if we don't have constant stimuli to adapt, then that's when all the systems start to shut down.
Exactly. And if you don't put in the right effort and it's kind of coddling the individual. That's not what they need. You're not going to generate change that way.
Yeah, they need a drill sergeant yelling at them.
No, but they do need to reach into a very uncomfortable experience.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Man, so much information tonight. We could go on for hours, truly. I mean, I love this talk. I love the muscle-centric medicine. I love how the body, it's always interesting, teaching this stuff too. It's just always fascinating how it's always changing, how we have so much dogma out there in the nutrition world and in the muscle physiology world too. There's just so much dogma involved and you can't break it because it's such a belief.
I know.
At 0.8 grams, and athletes need 1.5 grams, or if you only do this, you need this much or this, and it's such a dogmatic approach. And when you look at it, it's based on poor data from a century ago,
right?
That didn't really have great controls to begin with.
Right. And the body becomes more efficient. You can adapt to any style of eating, and the body becomes more efficient at whatever you do.
Yeah.
I mean, with that being said, it has to work within your phenotype, right? You can't just eat a whole bunch of Twinkies and that's going to work. But
what? Come on.
But high protein diets, what they consider high protein diets, so you can go up to 3.4 grams per kilogram. And they've never seen a negative effect. What they have seen is improvement in body composition. It's just crazy taking a step back and just questioning, where do we get this information? Where did it come from? And why do we believe what we believe?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Why the dogmatic approach, the religious belief in the literature at that point of like, this is all it is. This is what we have to be doing. And this is what I see. And I've seen that so many times with my students and with people coming in. And I've had, another sidebar is, like you said, that constant adapting. The more adapting you do, the stronger you get, the more physiologically advanced you get in that sense, is when the heart rate, the working with athletes or working with population with exercise physiologists of, the 220 minus your age, times 0.6 to 0.8 equals your max heart rate. For a cardiac patient, yeah. Or an untrained person, yeah. But for an athlete, no. How many athletes, Ironman level, they're running at 160 to 180 the whole time of an Ironman. Or even, a CrossFit athlete running up there, if not more so, at a more denser body mass. And that's still at 90% or better of a lot of their, or 180 beats at 90% of what their body should be running at.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's really about being smart and open-minded and flexible in your thinking. If you want to be optimized and really questioning, and people shouldn't even take my word for it. They should go read the data themselves. It's out there, right? It's 30 years of data, 30 years of research.
There's a lot.
Not my own.
Yeah, and the facts are there, and it's always changing, which is cool.
Yeah.
Instead of sticking, like you're saying, sticking to that dogmatic approach to doing the same thing over and over gets you the same result.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Oh, good. Your website for your clinic?
Yes. So my personal website is drgabriellelyon.com. And my current clinic is www.ashcenter.com.
Okay.
I'm pretty active on Instagram. I try to post often, and that's Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. And
great site, great Instagram there. I know there's a picture hidden there of you stalking a celebrity on a bus.
That may be you. I will find it. I'm gonna find that. And I think you did a blue Magnum, or what was it? Blue Steel or something.
Did a Blue Steel, did a little, little side view there.
I'm gonna find it, and I'm definitely posting that.
I know you thought it was Sean Astin, Samwise Gamgee behind you, but no, it was just me.
So much better.
Dr. Gabrielle, thank you for being on the show. You're a wealth of information. Everybody go to her websites, get her stuff, get her information from there. She's got her own protocol there, the Lyon protocol. She's phenomenal. She's so knowledgeable. Any last little tidbits, tips, tricks, or tutelage you have for my audience?
Don't be afraid to train hard and eat meat.
Eat meat. Hashtag eat meat. Well, thanks again for being on the show, and we'll see you all later.